Thanks, Pam. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Hope you can see us. Lot going on in the world right now. I always like to start with the hot topics. Thought it was interesting that the Toys R Us company, after coming out of bankruptcy 4 years ago, announced yesterday that they could possibly be looking at getting into the theme park business. As we know, the brick and mortar big box businesses have been looking for ways to expand their business, and linking that to themed entertainment could certainly be smart on their part. We'll watch that and we'll see what's happening. Over in Japan, COVID cases continue to pound Japan, impacting theme park operations and continuing to limit the capacities that they're allowed to have throughout the country. And there's rumors that there could be possible shutdowns if the COVID cases don't start to recede. In Florida, they're relaxing some of its restrictions, and vaccinations there are now available to anyone over 16. People are wondering if theme parks could now be allowed to increase their capacity limits before the busy summer season, and we're certainly hoping that comes to pass. Over in California, they could lift their capacity restrictions by June 15th, when their tier system is scheduled to end, as long as the vaccinations remain available for those over 16 and if the COVID cases continue to fall. Disneyland announced this morning that they're going to start taking reservations on April 15th and open on April 30th. So that's great news for California, and of course the rest of the parks, Knott's Berry Farm, SeaWorld, Magic Mountain has already opened. So good news in California. It's starting to move in the right way. Some interesting news at Cedar Fair. They've announced a new general manager at their Cedar Point project. Carrie Boldman, a 16-year Disney veteran, is going to take over the helm of the 150-year-old park. First time a female general manager, vice president, has held the reins there. Congratulations, Carrie. We know you'll do a good job. Other moves within the organization: Pat Jones, who was former GM vice president at Carowinds, is moving to senior vice president, and Manny Gonzalez from Great America is going to be coming over to Carowinds. So Cedar Fair is on the move. Six Flags has announced this morning that their first quarter results are going to be presented on April 28th. Over in Europe, we're seeing that the industry and the countries are still continuing to scramble to halt the surge of the number of cases, and they are continuing to ramp up vaccinations. France, their minister indicated today that they may be at the same point today that they were last year. The British Prime Minister has reported that there is progress with the vaccines, so we're hoping that that continues. Still in lockdown, though, is the UK, Ireland, Ukraine, France, Germany, Poland, and Italy. So it's a difficult time there, and it continues to be difficult in South America, as you heard in our last podcast. So I think one thing that I wanted to talk about today briefly is, as we begin moving positively in our industry, I think we've heard a lot of people saying that they can't wait to get back to normal. Well, my advice is let's not go back to normal. We can be better. We've learned a lot during this last year. We've taken time to study, reinvent, look at problems differently than we ever have before. So let's find ways to improve. Let's not go back to normal. Let's be better than we ever have been in the past. And to talk about this, I want to introduce my guest today, a fellow who is well known throughout our industry. He's a great guy, a great thinker, Andreas Anderson. He's CEO and president of the Liseberg Group in Göteborg, Sweden. Some say Gothenburg. We'll say Göteborg. He operates one of Scandinavia's most visited amusement park, and it's really one of Europe's treasures. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to go see it. He's a 20-year veteran of the industry and a roller coaster fanatic. He loves them. He likes to ride. He's a past chair of IAAPA. He held that seat in 2018. And prior to that, he was vice president of European operations for IAAPA in the EMEA and area, and held that seat in the Belgium office. He currently holds board positions with the Farup Sommerland and the Lego House in Denmark, as well as Leo's Legoland, Europe's largest FEC chain. He heads up the IAAPA sustainability initiatives. He runs a blog called Reflections, and while he resides in Sweden, he's a Dane. He was born in Denmark. He has a 10-year-old daughter, Ellen, and he lives with two Great Danes, Alpha and Bravo. So really, there are three Great Danes in that house, including you, Andreas. So welcome to the I'm4FUN podcast, and I know our visitors are excited to hear what you have to say today. If there's anything you'd like to add to that, please do, and if not, I'm going to dive right in. But go ahead.
Dive in.
Okay. Well, good. If you've watched our podcast, we always say this hour goes very quickly because we already have questions coming in from viewers. We're going to have a couple of hundred people on here today by the end, and then we'll follow up, Andreas, with questions that we may not be able to get to you, and we'll put them in the ITPS news, and hopefully that way we can respond to our guests. Well, I think what I'd like to ask you first is to give us a quick overview of the amusement industry in Europe. No one knows that better than you. And you've been living a nightmare here for, I think it's over 16 months or about 16 months with your park and resort. So maybe you can just give us an overview of really what's transpired. The guests are already the viewers are already sending in some notes to us. So maybe you can start there.
Sure. No, as you mentioned in your introduction, the situation in Europe is not great. Most European countries are actually in some kind of lockdown right now. But we are seeing that parks will start to reopen over the next weeks. I think next week it's going to be the parks in the UK. Before Easter, the parks in Denmark opened. I think the Belgian parks will open as well. So it is progressing a little bit. In 2020, all the parks in Europe actually opened except for the parks in Sweden, which I represent. As you mentioned, we've been closed since December 2019. We hope to be able to reopen in the beginning of May. That's the latest we have from the authorities here. But again, everything depends on the infection levels, and there are no guarantees basically. But right now we're looking at a May 7th opening.
A May 7th. Mm-hmm. And would that be a daily opening? Would there be any limitations or restrictions like we're seeing in the US and some of the other countries placed on you?
Yeah, no, we will open with quite limited capacity. It's going to be around 20%, like the Florida parks reopened with, which just it's at least something. It's a start. We've been closed for so long. So I mean, any guests we can have, we'll take them. So
is your market and your guest basin? Are they primarily Swedish, or do they come from all over Scandinavia and Europe? But who would be your number one catchment area?
Well, it is a very regional market here in Gothenburg. We have around, in a normal year, we have around 3 million visitors, and 90% of those are actually Swedish. 10% are from other countries, but primarily from Norway and from Denmark. So we're pretty regional pack, or a very regional pack, and I guess that's one of the good news in the situation we're in. We're not dependent on a large inflow of international tourists,
Yeah.
which makes us a little bit more resilient in that sense. But again, it's we need to reopen. so
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Will it, Andreas? Will it be a soft opening? Will you put the, as we say here, the pedal to the metal and come out full speed ahead, or will you ramp it up as you get reopened?
We're gonna start slow, and I
Okay.
think that, first of all, we will be open with some restrictions, but I think one of the challenges you have when you've been closed for as long as we have is that, I mean, you lose some muscle memory. I mean, we've lost a lot of staff. We've had to let
Yeah.
go quite a few people, and we've also had people applying for other jobs,
Sure.
and so we're a little bit thin in that sense. And you also, I would say, lose a little bit of self-confidence. We're not an organization that is really, we're not meant to stand still. We're meant to be on the go all the time. And when you break an organization like ours for that long, it's going to take a little bit of time to get it up and running again.
Sure.
So we're going to start slow, again at a very very low percentage of our actual capacity, and then we're gonna build on that, hopefully over the summer.
How many operating days would Liseberg have if you took it from pre and post?
So in a normal year, we have around 180, 190 operating days in a year. With the summer season, Halloween and Christmas.
Yeah.
Uh, we're gonna open a little bit later this year, but then we're gonna add days later in the season, especially if we're opening with, or we're gonna continue to have a cap on our capacity. We will add additional opening days later in the season.
One of the questions that just came in from Erica, she asked, is what is the unemployment rate currently in Sweden? And as you mentioned, you've lost employees. What is your approach to getting them back and assuring them that they'll have a job?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the unemployment rate in Sweden is not super high. I mean, but normally we don't really have an issue getting staff, and I don't think we will this year either. But the challenge we faced, losing staff over the last 16 months, is the fact that
Yeah,
if you're an ambitious engineer or a really good chef, I mean, and you're not allowed to cook for 16 months, you will be looking for other opportunities, and that's what's happened. We've
sure.
lost quite a bit of competencies over the last year, and sure enough, we'll get them back. But again, it does impact the speed we can get, we can get it back up to speed, because it is a thin organization, I would say.
Sure, sure. Well, you put out a report earlier. You said that you had lost due to the close down, and we all understand that. And this isn't unusual to anyone else in the business. But you said that you'd lost about 97% of your revenue was gone, which was, I think, somewhere around 55 million euros. How does a park like that sustain and then come back at the level that you need to?
Yeah, we lost about 130 million euros in revenue, and then our loss was about 55 million euros.
Hmm.
Well, the good news is that we have a very strong balance sheet. I mean, we had saved up for a rainy day, if you will.
Good.
And we refinanced quite early in the process, and did sort of a worst case refinancing that also gave us a little bit of say peace and quiet, in the sense that we didn't have to look at cash flows all the time throughout the year, which was good. So in that sense, we're okay, but at the same time, obviously we can't sustain this forever.
Sure.
We need the cash flow, we need the guests, and we need to get back into business, basically. I hope that 2020 will not repeat itself this year, because then we will start to get in trouble.
Hitchhiking on that comment, one of the questions was, has the Swedish government presented help to Liseberg, and if they have, what form has it come in?
Well, the schemes in Europe are very similar, because they are actually regulated by the EU legislation, the competition authorities. So the schemes we've had here in Sweden have been quite similar to some of the schemes they've had in Germany or France or Italy, whatever.
Sure.
Usually it is often a furloughing scheme. You get some sort of compensation to keep your staff and not let them go. And then in some cases you also get they cover part of your fixed costs. But there are great variances to how generous these schemes are. And in Sweden, we've not been very generous. I mean, we lost 55 million euros last year. I think we've received compensation from the government for around 5 million. So it's been about 10%. So not
enough.
No, no,
not enough. Has there been a lobbying effort within the country to ask the government to do more? And if there has been, what have you run into?
So yes, I can say we've been working quite fiercely, and the Swedish Parks Association. I would say one of the good things about, well, there are not a good things to say about 2020, but one of the very few good things about 2020 was the fact that it in many ways brought the Swedish industry more together. I've been spending so much time with my colleagues at parks and resorts that run Gröna Lund and Kolmården and Ska, and
Sure.
And we've been on daily calls for a year. We've been working all the political contacts. We've been really had a very, very strong cooperation throughout the last 12 months.
Sure.
So no, we've been working quite fiercely, both on, you could say, the reopening issue, which has been devastating to the industry, and is really a consequence of a legal technicality. It was not meant to be this way, but it was when the legislators found this out and wanted to fix it. It was just too late. So we've been working on that issue, and then we've of course also been working on the compensation issue. And actually today there was a big announcement in the Swedish media that they are looking at additional compensation for parks like us that has been closed down for a long time. So we're not quite there, but I think we'll get there.
So you haven't had I'm sure you're familiar with the PPP program that a lot of businesses here in the U.S. had, including my companies, and it was a savior for us because it kept us going for this drought, this horrible period. So, do you think it'll, even as you get open, do you think they will continue to support and look at providing that kind of possible revenue?
Probably not. No, I think most programs will probably start to to disappear over the coming months. And again, that's fine. I mean, as long as we can we can get our get back into business, we should be okay.
Well, we know this. We're seeing globally. We know there's a pent up demand. We here in the United States, and I've been quoted on this in the media for 4 months, saying that it's going to be the roaring 20s here when it comes back. We're already seeing that in Florida. We've seen it at the parks that have been open, where they've already sold out over Easter break, and they're continuing to ramp up. We're watching the hotels, we're watching the airlines, which are again beginning to fill up. And of course, all that's contingent upon safety and vaccinations, and that we don't have any huge spikes, although we're seeing some pop-ups. So hopefully that continues for your market and throughout Europe. Here are a couple of questions that came in. If you'll scroll back there, this one is from Adrian. He says, Andreas, greetings from Berlin. I would like to know if Liseberg will open their brand new dark ride this year that you've been working on.
We will. We will. It is finished, and it's been ready since April last year.
And maybe you could tell us a little bit about that theme.
Sure. It's a classic children's dark ride. It's actually quite old-fashioned. It's animatronics based. There's no shooting, no AV, no nothing. It's really a very, very good old-fashioned dark ride that is based on our own character, a green rabbit. And it's sort of a visit to this rabbit's underground world, where they do strange
things happen.
Yeah, it's a very, very cute ride, and again, it's one of those frustrations we've had for the last 12 months, is that this thing has been ready and waiting for guests, and we've not been able to present it. So no, we will open it, definitely.
Well, hopefully the marketing will build, the anticipation and excitement will build, and boom, people will return in droves to see it. Here's another one. I'm jumping around a little bit. This is from Ahmad. He said, Andreas, how will you recover your ops cost with working at a 20% capacity?
So we should be okay. I mean, I think that if we have a break even around 5,000-6,000 guests in park, and under normal circumstances we can take in 30 easily. Yeah. But 5,000-6,000 is fine, and it also depends a little bit on the way we price our product, and whether these guests they buy the full package, including rides, or they buy other products. So we should be okay. We're not going to make a ton of money, but we should be able to make a small profit. We're also going to work to turn over the guests so that we will actually have a night rider pass that we're going to sell. So I think we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
What are your operating hours now, daily and weekends?
So weekends, it's under normal circumstances 11 to 11. We're going to shorten that a little bit, actually, to save on ops. So it's probably going to be more like 12 to 9, because then we don't need 2 shifts. We can work with one, and then we're going to increase the hours, when we can get more people into the park, and also we see there is a demand. But we're going to start a little bit on the low side, basically.
How many employees does Liseberg have?
So when we are in full operation, summertime, it's about 2,800. We're gonna probably start with around 1,000. Again, because we're gonna reduce opening hours, and we're also gonna be, play it safe to begin with.
Yeah, sure. Brian asks us. He says, Andreas, what's the plan to bring visitors back to the park again? And what's the marketing approach going to be?
So we have you could say a phased approach, where I think that the first phase in our communication will actually be about safety. It's going to be about how to, how to visit the park in these new COVID times. It's going to be about to communicate that you have to book your visit. You have to we'll have virtual queuing. There are all these safety measures in place that you have to keep in mind when you visit the park. So that's like the first wave. We're open, yay, but we're also you need to know these things about your visit. The second wave is of course going to be about the new ride we're opening, and also some of the new you could say pricing concepts we're going to test. So it's going to be sort of a you could say a classic marketing plan, but just with the added information on safety at least to begin with.
One of the questions we've asked a lot of our guests who are in the operating seat that you're in is, are you going to increase your marketing operating expense from what you previously did, say back in 2018-19, or to get it out there more and draw them back faster, or will it be basically about the same?
So I think there are two schools here, and I think, and I've sort of I've had the insight in both schools. I have colleagues that has really reduced the marketing spend because they feel it doesn't really, with the capacity limitations and everything on, it doesn't really make sense. And then there are the other school that is really trying to drive the message out in the market. I think we're probably going to do a little bit less, at least to begin with, again, because we have those limitations when it comes to capacity.
Yeah.
But that being said, we will not reduce the investment substantially, at least not yet.
This next question, Andreas, they're coming in at me on both sides here. So take a drink of something. You're going to need it here. One of the questions is from one of our large ride manufacturers, and they said, "What has been your process of working with the manufacturers, not just during the shutdown, but looking forward out 5 to 10 years?" Has Liseberg continued the planning process, and are you considering new rides and attractions?
Well, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. We have rides. Well, sorry, we had in some new rides planned for this year, 2021. We've postponed those to 2022, and then you could say the lineup we had planned for 23, 24, that has sort of been moved with this postponement. So we've basically not taken anything away, but we've just moved it a year, because again we lost 2020.
Sure.
But then when you lose the cash flow we've lost in 2020, we've also had to really reduce our capex moving forward. Not as much on the ride side, because I think we all know that rides drive attendance, drive our business, but I would say some of the more, you could say, supplementary projects or projects that may not be that essential to the business, we've postponed or canceled. But that being said, it has been an interesting process over the last 12 months, in the sense that we're standing in the middle of our biggest investment project ever. We are outside my window building a new 460-room hotel and an indoor water park at a total investment of 250 million euros. And doing that, in the middle of a pandemic, that is I would say sometimes a bit challenging, in the sense that you have to keep sort of like two mindsets. There is sort of the mindset here and now where you have to mitigate all the consequences of the pandemic. We've had to let people go through all these cost saving programs, and we've had to be really careful in the planning. But at the same time, we also have to look out, and look at what comes after and I think that has been sometimes challenging, but I feel we have kind of succeeded in keeping that long perspective, because there will be a day after this, and
Sure.
we should be ready for it.
Well, that you answered, AJ over at Blackpool. They wanted to know how that hotel development is progressing, and as well as your new water park. So, when do you think they both come online? What's the timing on that?
So the hotel will come online winter spring 23. So we're about 2 years out. Water
Mm-hmm.
park about a year later. So we're
Okay.
still it's you know, it's a, for us it's a big project. You know, it's a complicated project. We're building in the middle of the city, and so it's going to take a little bit of time, but yeah, we're very excited about it, and also very hopeful that that will sort of like propel us into you know, the post-COVID future.
Yeah, well, I think it's great planning. I've sat on some committees with you through the years, and you've always been a great thinker, and you've always looked out, and you're a great planner. So we don't anticipate anything less. I'm sure those resort issues will help bring that business back quickly. How many rooms is the hotel? If you said it, I didn't hear it.
457.
That's large. That's large.
It's a big hotel.
And what level would you classify it at in range of low, medium, high?
It's a
Who's it serve?
four star superior hotel. But it's very targeted families. I mean, it's you know, we have family rooms. All rooms have at least 5 beds.
Oh wow.
So it's rather large rooms, and then you know, very much focused on families with children. So it, you know, it's a lot of rooms, but it's also a lot of people, and a lot of, you know, breakfast that has to be served, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's a big machine. It's a big machine, but
You know, one of the things I've heard you say in the past is that as it relates to IPs, you said that you think that the use of IPs is more or less a short term solution to bringing people in. I'm basically in your camp as well, and I would also add to that it's very expensive that when you're using IP. But we have seen, I mean, feeding frenzies. We saw the Middle East where they gobbled up basically every IP that was out there when Dubai and Abu Dhabi was starting to develop, and now we're seeing that over in Saudi Arabia. IPs are good, particularly if you're the company that operates the parks like Universal and Disney. But maybe you could just expand on that a little bit, what your thinking is on IPs.
well, I think, you know, as you mentioned, there are some pros and cons. You know, the pros is the fact that you know, your time to market, you know, probably gets really, you know, you can propel that. And it's difficult getting through the noise in the marketplace, and I think an IP can definitely help that, and especially also if you're new in the marketplace, you know,
Sure.
it may be great. But I also think that you do lose control, you know, and it's costly, and I think that if we all start doing the same thing, it's not going to work for anybody. You know, if we all add IPs, it's just going to be a clutter. And I think that you know, there are those who feel it's the right thing to do. And I think if you do it, you know, if you do it right, I think it's going to be, it can work really well. But then, you know, on the other hand, I would probably rather build my own. There's actually there's a funny or an interesting example with the Plopsa Group.
I was going to bring them up.
All right, because they've always had this really sort of very stringent IP strategy where they've built, you know, their IPs and on various platforms, and then they've built the parks, and it sort of all, you know, worked together in this
Yeah.
ecosystem they created, and I think they've been really good at that.
Yeah.
But now they've actually for this year they have added an IP from one of the biggest music festivals in Europe called Tomorrowland. building a large new spinning roller coaster from Mac. They're adding this Tomorrowland IP, and I think that's quite clever. It's quite clever because they're actually they're expanding their target group, and it's sort of if you do it right, it can definitely make sense.
Well, I'll never forget, and you were there when Plopsa gave the address at the owner general manager's breakfast that morning, and I think the buzz after that presentation was people were shocked at Plopsa because they'd been under the radar. Now there are some of us in the industry who've known them and worked with them, but for those who didn't, they were really surprised. And you're right, they're very smart in their approach and how they do things. Here's another one from Gil. He said, "Greetings from Israel." We got a lot of countries on today, Andreas. We're going to be over 25 countries, and we have every continent on, just so you know. He said, "Andreas, did you ever consider opening another park in another country where the weather allows more opening days and where we can buy the map behind you?" Where we can buy the map behind you. So I think what he's asking is, have you ever looked at expanding to a new location or in different weather markets?
So the answer is no. I mean, there has been projects in the past, not with my predecessor, but with his predecessor. So we're far back in the 80s or 90s.
Sure.
And there were conversations with various players about bringing the Liseberg concept or IP out in the world. But the thing is that I think what we do here is very much connected to the location in the city and Swedish culture. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult to do that. I used to work at Tivoli in Copenhagen, and for the 2 years of my time there, I was actually responsible for a subsidiary consultancy company that was owned by Tivoli, and we did projects around the world, and also opened a Tivoli park in Japan, which was an absolute disaster, because taking Tivoli and moving it to in this case Kurashiki, which is outside of Osaka, it just didn't work. So I've been a little bit burned by that experience. So I think we're just going to stay here and enjoy the lovely weather of
Göteborg. This one is from Ahmad. He said, "Andreas is one of the greatest visionaries in the theme park that I've ever met. My question is, where do you see the industry going after COVID-19?
Thank you, Ahmed. That's a good question. I think we're all trying to figure that one out right now. I think that we're gonna stay the course. I still think there are some fundamentals around our business that are so you could say so strong. That the fact that we create social experiences, that is something you do in real life. I think that's really strong, and that's also going to stay strong.
Sure.
COVID. But I think that what we'll see is that COVID is going to accelerate a lot of the trends or the changes we were already seeing. I think that we're going to see a lot more digital integration. I think we're going to see new pricing models. I think we're going to see that sustainability is going to be much more important to many players, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, I think all the things we were seeing change before COVID. I think they've just been accelerated by the pandemic. But I'm pretty confident that we're gonna stay the course. That being said, I think there are also some adjacent industries that may impact the way we do business. I mean, I think the cruise industry, for example,
Yeah.
how is that going to fare? I don't know, and does that have an impact on us? And I think also the way that we travel in the future may also impact, especially the larger destination parks. I listened to a podcast a couple of weeks ago with the CEO of Airbnb, and they were forecasting that that business travel will never get back to the same level as it was, which may actually impact leisure travel positively, because there will be a capacity that you will have
Openings.
to reutilize, and also because if people travel less with their jobs, they're gonna travel more with their families. So we'll see. But I'm pretty optimistic, and I think we're gonna stay the course, more or less.
Well, as you know, I've been around a long time. A lot of friends in the industry all over the world. I talk to them. Everybody at Disney, Universal, over in Europe, and there is optimism. There's a lot of optimism, and we will get through this. As we know, over 500 million people went to themed attractions last year globally. Here in the U.S., it was about 375 million, and I think, Andreas, that as I mentioned earlier, when we see this resurgence, when this pinup demand does break and the dam bursts, I think we're not only going to see some of our largest crowds and some of our most appreciative crowds that we've ever entertained, but I also think we're going to see development globally on a level we've never seen. We do a lot of feasibility work at ITPS, and it's been amazing. For a year, we sat here sucking our thumb, and in the last 2 months now, the amount of feasibility interest that has come to us from areas of the world that are emerging and actually doing things now, I think is going to be incredible. And I think that bodes well for our industry, and I think it bodes well for our suppliers and manufacturers, because if you heard Jim Shea from Premier and Rick Hunter from ProSlide and Francine Gonzalez from Whitewater, who have been on, they've all talked about the supply side. It dried up. Yeah, there were some things going on, but the pipe itself kind of emptied, and now we've got to begin packing the pipe. And there's no question that in my mind, from talking to people, it's not what Dennis Spiegel thinks, it's what he's hearing out there, that when we get back, it's going to be greater and bigger than ever. So that's good. Here's another question from Pim. He says, great news on the dark ride you mentioned for the kids. He said, Andreas, will you consider something for the older public as well? Would it be a dark ride or something else that will bring them and satisfy them?
Thank you for that question, Pim.
Is he selling?
I think he is. That's fine. That's a good. No, of course we will. And I think it's always about finding a balanced approach to your investments. 1 year we do something for the small children, the next year we'll do something for larger kids, and the next year again it's for families. So you always keep that cycle going. We've been, this year the focus is on the smaller kids, and then in the years to come we're gonna expand it a little bit and go a little bit broader. Yeah.
Is your market like most markets, Andreas? Is it the under 12, then the teens, and the pre, and then the kind of does yours fall off as it gets above the 45, 50, or do they hang in there? Are you seeing
They
that?
actually hang in there. They come here for different reasons, though. I mean, they come here for the music or for the restaurants. And I think that's one of the challenges of operating a park like Liseberg, is that your demographic is almost flat. I mean, we did a couple of years ago, we looked at our annual pass database, and
Yeah.
the youngest person we had in that database was 2 years old, and the oldest one we had was 104. So it just tells you that it is a very broad product, which
Yeah.
is it's its strength, but it's also sometimes the challenge because you can't be everything to everybody all the time.
No, you can't. What's your published annual attendance during during pre-COVID?
About 3 million, 3 million
That's what I
visits.
thought. Yeah, that's huge. And how many acres or hectares is the park itself?
17 hectares,
Yeah. Wow.
gross, but a little bit less when we took net, and then we bought 5 additional hectares south of the park where we're now building the hotel water park, and then
Yeah.
we've sold part of it to Volvo, and they're building a large brand experience next to the hotel as well. So the whole area is gonna expand quite substantially.
Well, it's not always size; it's quality and how you develop it. I'll never forget when I was chairman of IAAPA, I went to Japan and I was hosted by Kazuo Yamada, who owned Togo, and he owned the Hanayashiki amusement park, right in the middle of Tokyo, and it was 1.5 acres, and we stood in the middle of the park. It was so glorious, so well done. When I walked in, my wife and I were walked through this group of employees, all recognizing us, and Mr. Yamada met us, and he said, "World's smallest, but most efficient." Amusement park. I'll never forget that. And it really was. They had layers and it was just fabulous. So size doesn't always matter. Here's some guy. Do you know a guy named Yaron?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Should we skip that question? He said, where do we see Andreas going in the future? Is there a next step after Liseberg?
On your own. Well, the funny story is that I've never made a career move without consulting Jerome. So he will. I can tell you, Jerome, you will be the first to know.
Good answer. We'll leave that there. Okay. This is from Andreas Dan. He said, with the herd immunity vaccinations being key to putting the pandemic behind us, he said, what actions have been supported by the industry in Europe to encourage the governments like the EU to increase and step up the vaccinations?
I don't think that much has been done, quite frankly, because I don't think we've had really a voice in that context. I think the whole public health and safety vaccination issue has really been driven by other and probably more important or prominent players in the political sphere. So we've been, I think we as associations, whether it's the national associations or IAAPA, I think we've been focusing more on the various compensation schemes, but also on the reopening guidelines and on also on actually getting the parks open. I think it's been quite valuable to especially in our dialogue with the politicians, to point to everybody else and say, well, we're not open, but they're open in Denmark and Finland and Norway and Germany. I mean, so it's been more about those issues, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct, and we know it's amazing. It's like trying to hug an amoeba. You grab it here and it pops out there. You grab it here and it squirts out there, and it just keeps moving. And everybody has different situations and different approaches to it, but we have to solve it. I've got a question for you. You've been very instrumental in leading the strategic planning of IAAPA through the years. I happened to be involved with that way back when, and it's always been an important part of IAAPA and our industry, and it really has helped lead our way to great growth in not only membership, but revenues and manufacturer side, education, etc. Where do you, based on two things, based on COVID, and what it has done to paralyze the industry for this year. Where do you see the strategic plan heading? Does it need to pull up and take a different route, number one, and then get back on course, which is always good? And number two, a question came in. It says, Andreas, do you think that IAAPA will have the convention this year in Orlando based on what we're seeing globally with COVID spiking?
Well, if we take the first question, I'll begin with that. I think the theme of the strategic plan that we're in the sort of in the middle of implementing right now. The theme of that plan that we finished back in 2018 was change. The fact that the world is changing at an accelerating speed, and to keep up with that change, we need to be more agile. We need to be strong financially. We need to be able to rethink everything we do continually. And I think that COVID has kind of superimposed or accelerated that point of view. I don't think any of us really understood that things would change this much. But it has been. I think the plan is actually a pretty solid foundation to stand on also moving forward. When it comes to the expo this year, I do think it's going to take place. I think that it's difficult to of course to forecast 7 months out, but I think there is a good chance that it will take place. But that being said, I'm not sure that the expo will ever be exactly the same as it was. I think that there might also be opportunities or the need to rethink that part of our business model as well, because I think people are going to travel less, quite frankly.
One of the questions that's hitchhiking on that is, do you think that all of the expos that we've developed over the last 10 years are necessary now? The Asian, the European, the American, or do they become more important?
I think they become more important. I think again, I think that and I think that's also one of the learnings that we've had with IAAPA is that these regional touch points are just so important for the regional growth or the regional presence of the association. And I think that I think the regional shows are gonna increase in importance, and maybe we'll see more of them, in the future. In fact,
I mean, if Asia stays on the track that it was on pre-COVID, we were estimating that Asia, China primarily, would be the largest theme park market in the world, and I think it was by, at that time, 2025 or 2030 maybe. Do you remember? It was in the plan, I believe. So
I think we're not going to see less regional products or less regional events or shows. I think we're probably going to see more of them.
More of them. Do you see any consolidation of the industry? Do you see, this question came up in one of the previous podcasts with the Water Park Association and IAAPA. Do you think that it makes more sense from a supplier and manufacturer standpoint to gather all at one point, larger in the future than continue to spend? I mean, the suppliers, as we know, have been impacted greatly.
Well, I would hope so. I think it will make a lot of sense. But that being said, I think that we also have to look a little bit to the past and some of the consolidation efforts that we've completed in the past. They were not all successful. I think we have to be very respectful of the fact that you know that they're these associations that are more specialized, in a specific constituency or specialized in a specific region, they also they also create value for this group of members. So if it's done respectfully and it makes sense, I do think it's absolutely worth
Exploring.
exploring.
Yeah, I don't think we ever close the book or close the topic. I think as we have grown, and through my tenure in the industry and your 20 years in the industry, we've seen great changes. And I have always said the one thing that will never change about our industry is that it will always continue to change. And that's what's driven our industry. Another question, it says, what would you say are the most important factors for creating a positive and high quality guest experience? How do you think that Liseberg accomplishes this now and in the future?
Oh, that's a good one. Good
Yeah.
question. I think one of the fundamentals of our industry is that we first and foremost we all represent service companies, and I think when you work with service delivery, staff is just key. It doesn't really. I mean, you can build the best roller coasters in the world. You can hire the biggest musical acts on your stages. You can do all these things, but
Yeah.
if the guest experience, the service level, if that doesn't, if it's not high quality, it does none of it really makes sense. So I think focusing on staff, focusing on being a world-class workplace, I think that's probably the biggest component, I think, to long-term success in our industry.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. One of the questions a viewer just asked, it says, Andreas, are there any positive permanent changes that you see that have come from COVID in the global industry? And what can we learn from the shutdown about valuable lessons?
That's
Made us better thinkers, I think. It made us better thinkers.
Well, I think that a couple of things. I mean, I think there are some very tangible things that has come out of this, which I think is great. I mean, I think for example, queuing. That's an issue we're all facing, and it can actually be a long-term threat to our industry if we don't take the queuing problem seriously. If you're a child born in Sweden today, you will not queue for anything. You're not queuing in the supermarket. You're not queuing in the bank. You're not queuing. I mean, everything can be done on this today. So we as an industry, we have to take this problem seriously. And I think that with COVID, we're all experimenting. We're adding virtual queues, we're doing reservation systems, we're all doing all these things. I think that's a good sort of a tangible example of something that has come out of it, which is actually not at all negative. That being said, I think on a more, you could say, philosophical or abstract scale, I think that what COVID has learned us is that change can happen, and it can happen fast. And we have as organizations and as business leaders and as companies, we have to stay alert, be flexible,
Act quickly.
Act quickly, and that's not actually a bad thing. It's I think there is sort of for all of us a tendency of getting a little bit fat and happy, when everything is going your way. And I think you have to recalibrate sometimes. And I think COVID has been a recalibration for a lot of us.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've talked about in past podcast is that was in the pipeline. It was there. People were looking at it, but the touchless, contactless, we have seen where that has been implemented. You haven't had the chance to do that till you reopen, but per capita spending, where that has been done, through the roof. Yeah, absolutely. So that's one that's here to stay. Sanitizing, disinfecting, cleaning, our whole theories on how that has been done in the past will change. So, Andreas, it's a quick hour, isn't it?
Boy, boom. It is.
It really goes fast. And I'm sitting here. If you could see the studio, I've got 20 more questions that people want to ask you. But I was asked by someone last week, said, Dennis, why did you start the podcast and why are you doing this? And I said, I did it so that we could, as an industry, really communicate with the leaders of the industry, people who are in the trenches, who are actually charting the courses and paving the ways for what we're doing. And you're certainly in that seat, and you've done it. And they're not advertisements for Liseberg or ITPS or any of the other companies that have been on. We talk about honest, truthful things that are occurring in the industry, and we get the outlooks of leaders like yourself, Andreas. So really appreciate your coming on. I hope that after you get open, I would like to invite you back towards the end of the summer to talk with our viewers. And this is one of our most well-attended podcasts, as I said, all over the world, every continent. And really appreciate your insight. You're a good man.
Thank you, Dennis. And thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. Our pleasure. And to everyone else, I want to just talk a moment about our upcoming guests. We have Denise Bexon's going to be with us. She's senior executive for Maurice Pier, which includes their various beachfront water parks and resorts along the New Jersey shoreline. Denise heads up all the recruiting and staffing for the company and also oversees their entire water park division. And she's actively involved with the industry and the water park with Ellison Associates and the aquatic safety schools. For those of you who know Denise, she's certainly a wonderful person and a great supporter of our industry. And we appreciate Maury's allowing her to be on. She's going to discuss the J1 visa program, which hopefully we get back here very soon, and it's very important to our industry. So I want to thank her for coming on. We also have former chairman Mario Mammon, founder and president of Enchanted Kingdom. He's going to come on with Richard Koh from Malaysia. Two great people, been in the industry a long time, really know the Asian markets, and they will talk to us about what's happening over there, what their outlook is. And then after that, we're going to have some fun with some historians. We're going to get Jim Futrell, our fellow who does our IAAPA history archives, and Tim O'Brien, who's a veteran of the outdoor and the theme park industry, and talk about just some of the great stories and characters from the industry through the years. So, as I always like to say, if we don't have fun, how can we sell fun? And we're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time. And that means even more today. I lost two good friends recently to COVID in the last 3 weeks, and they went too soon. We're all lucky, Andreas, you and I and all of our friends. We work in a wonderful industry. We don't put smoke in the skies. We don't pollute the waterways. Really, at the end of the day, what we do is we put smiles on people's faces, and we make memories that last a lifetime. So thank you to all of you from tuning in with Andreas and I from around the world. Please join us for our next podcast with Denise. And we will bid you adieu. And again, thanks, Andreas. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.